Hey guys, so this was week nine's lesson, term one, week nine, and it is a watercolour bird. So what we're going to do today is use watercolours. We're using a 2B. I've got a mechanical pencil here, but there's a 2B lead in it. So if you've got a normal 2B, that's great. I've got a normal rubber and I've got a couple of brushes. Also, what you might like to have handy for when it's dry to do some outlining is a black pen. I'm using an Artline 200. It's not waterproof, so if you use it while it's wet, it will actually bleed into your artwork. So just be really careful and make sure it's super dry when you do it. Couple of different colorways. We tried it in green, and we've got just a drawing. So if you don't have watercolor at home, you don't have to have it colorful. You can use watercolor pencils, you can use normal paint, you can use colored pencils. Those are perfectly fine. So just a few different options of what you can do. Okay, get a new piece of paper. Watercolor paper is best, but if you don't have watercolor paper, white cardboard works really well. Anything that's thick. You can use normal paper, but you might get a bit of a crinkle. So you just have to be aware of that. 2B pencil. What you want to do is you want to plan first. Step number one is always plan. So you want to do a top line and a bottom line, where the top of the head's going to be, where the bottom of the feet is going to be. That's step number one. Step number two, find the shapes. So whenever you're doing an animal that has a head and chest, it's going to be made up of circles. So this one, the chest and the hips is pretty much in one area. So it's going to be one big circle. The head is one smaller circle. So it's going to look like the number 8. What you need to remember first is we need room to fit our legs in. So sometimes you can put an extra little guideline in, about there, to say that's where I want my bottom of my belly to be, and then you have the legs coming in. So let's start with the shape first. So body shape, nice big circle. Doesn't have to be a perfect circle. It's not going to be the finished shape at the end anyway. Then you've got a circle for the head. The head sits directly above the body, just like the number 8. That's step 2 done, finding your shapes. Step 3, join the shapes together to make it make sense. What you need to do is start at the top of the head, curve the line gently down until it touches the side of the body. Then on the other side, you're going to start at the side of the head and curve it inwards this time and back to the side of the body. The bird is looking off to the right, so you're going to have a slight crook in the neck, so you really do need to curve that line inwards. Now we get our rubber, just a normal rubber. We're going to get rid of our top guideline. We don't need it anymore. It did its job. We didn't run out of room. And get rid of the guideline for the body. Pop in any lines that you've missed. Then you want to rub out anything inside the shape. Now we can work on the face. We've got our basic shape. Should look like an avocado or a pear. We're going to start on the beak. Whenever you do a beak, don't just stick a triangle on the side of the face. You want it to look like it's actually part of the bird. The trick to that is starting the beak inside the face. I like to start with a center line first. That splits the top half of the beak and the bottom half. You can make your beak as long or as short as you'd like. Then we're going to start on the top beak. Start as far up as you'd like the top beak to be as thick. Curve it down to touch that guideline. And you're going to do exactly the same on the bottom. Curve it into the side of the face. Now simply join the top line to the end of the beak and the bottom line to the end of the beak. Then you want to take some time to rub this original face line out. The beak is not made of glass, so we won't be able to see the side of the face through it. If you have to redraw any lines in, that's perfectly fine. Now I want to change the side of my head and the side of the face. So I'm going to start the head a little bit further forward, and then I'm going to gently curve it back and then into a feather. The head is much broader. The original line is a little bit too much like a lollipop head, so it's not actually that round. It would be all right if it was a pigeon, but this particular bird has a really gentle slope for a head. Then again, you want to take your rubber, rub out your original line. Don't need it anymore. This is why I always draw really softly, because it's so much easier to rub out. I'm going to come in and do the wing and the tail next, and then I'll finish off the side of the face. All right, so the wing is a big sad mouth. And then we're going to continue the line down, and then we're going to bring it in. Make sure you don't touch the original line, just stop before you reach it. Get your rubber, rub out the original line. When it comes in to do the detail of these wings, what you want to remember is that there's one level of feathers, two levels of feathers. So I'm going to start with level 1. I'm going to show you the easy way first. Easy way, find halfway, and you simply do a smile, and then you do a line up. Smile, line up, until you run out of room. Now I'm going to show you the tricky way to do it. This is an advanced option. These little feathers are very wobbly. So you want to do a few wobbles, then come up. Wobble, wobble, come up. Wobble, wobble, come up. They get shorter as you go along. So you run out of room. That's the wing done. Second layer, exactly the same again. Wobble it, bring it up. They don't have to touch. Wobble it. Wobble it. Till you run out of room. You can rub out that original straight line because that will get in the way. If you need to redo your wobbles, that's okay. Wing done. Now we move on to the tail. The tail starts with a triangle with a curved corner. So starting towards the bottom of the bird, come out, curve it in, then touch the wing. Then when you're ready, you're going to extend a tail feather down and down. Again, if you want to do the easy one, you just join it with a smiley mouth. I'm going to do the wobbles. Straight line, wobbles. I've got some longer and some shorter to make it look like a curve. The tail is curved. Tail done. You can make that as long or as short as you want it to be, by the way. Now I'm going to fix this side of the body. He's a little skinny, so I'm going to make him cuter and rounder. So I'm going to bring him right out this time. Use the curve in your wrist to get a really nice original curve. Get rid of the first line. Now we've got a much better shape already. Didn't take much to change it. Now I want to do inside the face because I can't really work out where these go until I have this white section in. And the easiest way to go about getting that white section is to draw the eye first. So what you want to do, draw a circle in the top part of the beak, one circle. Then you've got a shine, that's a small circle in the top left corner. Then you've got the pupil. The pupil is the black part. The black part only touches the shine, doesn't touch the outline. Later, you can colour that in with a black pen. It's a bit more precise than doing it with watercolour, or you can go over it with a coloured pencil. From here, we can do our white section in the face. So I'm going to start at the top near my beak, and I'm going to come around the eye. Then I'm going to zigzag, and then I'm going to bring it into the eye. So over the eye, zigzags into the eye. Then I'm going to zigzag it out and stop. Then I have a big round section. And then bring it back to the bottom part of the beak. From here, I can work out my squished ovals. They look like rice, grains of rice. So I'm going to do 1, 2, they're all touching, 3. And it's okay if they come outside of the body, that doesn't matter. Then we've got 2 layers here. We've got layer number 1, it's like a little apron or a little bib, and then layer number 2. Layer number 1 starts from your little rice and it curves up towards the white section near the beak. Layer number 2 starts on the side of the body this time, and it's a big smile, and then it comes up and finishes in the same section. Now we've got the feet to do. Okay, so the body is now done, head's done. Now you've got the legs and the feet. When you're working with the legs, just remember to keep them really skinny. The skinnier, the better. Okay, it's more realistic than when a bird's legs are thin. But just like our legs, it starts off wide, and then as you come down the leg, it gets skinnier. So starting near the tail, let's do this leg first. Leave a little gap, and you're going to come down on an angle, start off wide, come in a bit skinnier. It doesn't have to touch that bottom line. For the toes are a little tricky. So what we're going to do is one line at a time. I'm going to come up, then I'm going to curve forward, then I put a little curve line, and then I come back in. That's for the claw section. And because it's a claw, it comes back in itself like a spike, then it comes into a round toe, and you bring it back to the center. And you're going to do exactly this, but flipped. So it's just a mirror image on the other side. So again, you can come out, curve it forward, curve it in. That end bit's a skinny spike with a round toe, and then bring it back until they touch. So that's toe number 1, toe number 2. Now we've got this little toe number 3 poking out here. So it starts from toe number 1, comes up, comes forward, comes in. Spike for the claw, curve for the toe, bring it back into the foot. And that's leg number 1 done. Leg number 2, you're going to leave a nice big gap because you don't want the toes to touch. And you're going to do a nice straight line on an angle, again wider before you get to the skinnier ankle. Exactly the same toes again. So start with toe number 1, out, forward, in. It's a claw, so it's a spike, round toe, bring it back into the middle. Don't let it touch the leg. Now we're doing the toe number 2, so it comes back, starting at the leg, back, forward, in. Spike for the claw, curve for the toe, bring it back to meet the first one. Third toe starts again, touching the first toe. And this one comes up, out, in. Spike, curve for the toe, bring it back in until it touches toe number 1. That is all your 2B done. So you're going to get your rubber and you're going to rub out that bottom line. We don't need it anymore. It did its job. We didn't run out of space. That's what they're there for. And now it's time to do some watercolor. Now we're going to do wet on dry technique. So wet on dry technique is dry paper, wet watercolor. So I've got my jar of water here. I've got my brushes. So I'm going to put those in the jar and keep them nice and wet. And I've also got a bit of paper towel handy or tissue. I'm going to use this to dry it off later because I want to do my pen work pretty quickly. You don't have to do it quickly. You can leave it for an hour or so to dry properly and then you can come back over it. So it all depends on how wet it is and what paper you're using. If you're using normal printer paper that you find in your printer, you probably will actually want to wait till it's dry. Watercolor paper is thicker, so it actually absorbs more water a little bit quicker. So it dries actually a bit faster. Also, printer paper is very thin, so using a pen, you don't want to get holes because that's the danger you have with a wet piece of paper and a pen. Holes are very common. Okay, let's get a medium-sized brush. So this brush is a size 4 round tip. So round tip are the pointy ones. Square tip they're chopped off at the top. So really great for things like backgrounds and big areas. Anything for small things, it's probably better to use a round tip brush, but whatever you've got at home will work. I'm going to do the same colors as this just so it's easy to understand. So what I'm going to do is pick a color. I've got this nice mulberry tone here. They don't look much in the video, but they're actually very, very vibrant. They're called brilliants. They're Koh-i-Noor brilliants. So I'm going to start at the head and work my way down. You can also use salt in this if you'd like to use salt. The salt will give you a really cool speckled look. I won't do it today. I don't think it's necessary in the bird. The bird is all splattered and that's kind of interesting enough. It doesn't matter if you go into your pencil lines. You shouldn't really see much of that anyway, and we're going to go over it in pen. Usually I'd get you to rub out your pencil lines a little bit, but not really necessary today with this one because we are doing a pen outline. And you can add other colours on top. So I've got a really nice purple here, so I can create some shadows around the face by just dropping some purple on top. Create some interesting shapes just dropping water on by itself. You get it spreading out. So you can create some really cool techniques. That way it pushes all the colour out and you get these really cool little droplets. You can also achieve that with rubbing alcohol. So I'm going to come into the chest area. I'm going to change my colour up. Let's introduce some blues. Leaving the face white. The face and the 2 or 3 little bits of circles, squish circles that look like rice, they're the only bits that actually stay white in this. You don't need a lot of watercolour for this. You can spread it out just using water like I'm doing. Again, I can bring in some pinks. And pink over blue is going to create a purple. Get really pretty tones with that one. I'm going to do a purpley blue coming out into the second little apron. When you're working next to a wet section and you're introducing new wet areas, like I'm doing now, it's going to do what's called bleed, which is one colour is going to pull into another section. So that happens when things are wet. We kind of want that to happen with this because it's far more interesting. We'll also be outlining the sections later anyway. So you can see my dark blue is bleeding into my light blue. And I'm going to get into probably the front of the head here. So back to my sort of mulberry colour. And I can bring it into my wing. My wing, I'm going to introduce some purple. I've got this lovely royal purple. So a few blobs, wash my brush, come in with some pinks because it's really interesting when you add extra tones. And then into some blues. I've got a nice blue here too. work. Now I'm going to come into the tail. Tail, I like that pinky tone, and it's okay if it bleeds into the wings, that doesn't matter. And I'm going to bring these straight lines down. So the longer the lines that you paint, the longer the feathers actually appear to be. You can add a little bit of blue in there if you'd like a bit of extra shadow. If at any time you're like, oh gosh, I don't really like how dark that is, you can get your paper towel or tissue and you can dab it up. It takes about 50% of the colour off, and then you can rework it. So a lot of people get nervous with watercolour because they think, oh, once it's down, there's nothing I can do about it. But there is plenty you can do about it. If you've got a magic eraser at home, they're the things that clean marks off walls. We use them in class sometimes. You might have seen me do it. They actually rub out watercolour off watercolour paper, which is pretty spectacular. Okay, I'm happy with that. Now here is the next step. We need grey. So I've got grey here just on my normal palette. That's grey there. So what I want to do, clean brush, activate the grey. And you want to do this while this is all wet, because it's bled or pulled the colour down into the belly. You only paint grey at the bottom here. The rest is filled with water with a clean brush, but I'll show you that. So grey first. I'm going to get the grey in before I start touching any extra sections. Wash your brush. Clean, wet brush. Just start filling in. So have a look at that bleed. Fill in the rest of the belly. Just keep washing your brush if it gets a little too dirty. Just needs to be filled in with water. And half of the fun is watching that bleed happen, because it pulls in from the tail, pulls in from the chest and the wing, and you get a really pretty sort of wishy-washy tie-dye look, which essentially is wetting the page and letting the colour take over. So that would technically be wet on wet. The next thing I'd like you to do are the legs and feet. So you can do them in grey or brown or black. They don't have to be perfect. I'm going to switch to my smaller brush. I've got a really teeny tiny brush. This would be the equivalent of a size 00 or 0. So I'm going to paint the beak next, and then I'm going to actually do the black part of the eye. So I'm going to let this dry off a little bit. That's the trick, is to get all the big stuff to dry off. Focus on the small stuff towards the end. So I want to work with a couple of colours because I like the pink and the purple together. So I'm going to start with that pinky mulberry tone. Top part of the beak. Wash your brush. Then we go for a purple. And if you like it looking like a little bit lighter like this, I literally just dropped water on it. And then I got a tissue and I absorbed it up a little bit. So a little bit of tapping in there and you get the cool water effect. If you like them to bleed into each other, you can just wet that pink a little bit more and it will reactivate the purple on the edge and it can bleed up. Okay, I'm going to do the eye next. So that's going to be black. You can do it with pen. You don't have to paint it. Eye done. So this is a painted eye, and that's one done with a pen. So you can decide which one you like. So from here we get to do the background. So the backgrounds are really fun to do. It's actually just a splatter background. When you do a splatter background, you want a really big brush with a lot of water on it. This is really full of water. Then you're going to select your colours. You can select any colours you want. So I'm going to select that mulberry colour. So I've got it on my brush. I'm going to re-dip it in my water, and then I'm going to tap. Doesn't matter if it goes in the bird. It's really interesting when it does. And choose a couple of colours to splatter in the background. Maybe 2 colours. I'll do a little bit of blue. You can even do 3 colours if you would like to do like a purple as well. If you want a lighter blue, just more water. So all of this area is just starting to dry. So you can put this aside and wait for it to fully dry. The other option, if you like this really watery background, is to add water with a clean brush, just water, and you can paint. And it will pull some of the original colour out from the body, and it will move the splatters around. Just going to be careful to go around the feet and the legs. Clean water. Really rough painting, not perfect at all. Introduce some of that mulberry colour in so it's not all blue. And from here, you get a tissue. You might want to leave it maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But when it's ready and it's almost dry, what you want to do is just pop a tissue over it and absorb up any leftover colour. What really matters is that inside the bird is dry. The rest doesn't really matter that much. So I'm just patting it down with the inside of my fingers, nice and flat. And then you want to gently peel it off. Don't wipe it because it will wipe anything else that's a little bit damp. You just want to take it away. I'm not worried that that's still wet because I'm only outlining my bird. So a couple of drops happened in the wing, kind of like it. It's kind of cool. Now I'm ready for outlining. So we move our little tissue, dirty tissue away. We get our black pen. You can use a normal ballpoint pen, that's fine as well. I just happen to have an art line here. So what we're going to do is go over all your lines. Everything you did in pen, you're going to outline. All these areas. over your pencil work. So just be really careful, because if it's wet, the pen will stop working. My feet are still a little wet, so I'm going to dry those off a little more. So I'm going to outline that white area around the face. Don't forget your zigzags. Zigzag up to the eye, then zigzag it down, and then around the face. Then if you wanted to, you can push yourself a little bit more and do a few more details, like little lines for the fur, feathers, and little feather lines here with little center lines. So those are just little backwards and forward flicking, like you're doing little tufts of grass. In here, little wobbly U's, the little center line. Wobbly U, center line. And you can do the same up here. Wobbly U, center line. Wobbly U, center line. It gives the illusion of feathers, layered feathers. Inside the white area, you can add some little flicks, like you're doing tufts of grass again. So under the eye, under the beaks, there's going to be some shadow under that beak, so it's like flick shading. You can add some shadows in the top part of the head. That's just colouring with pen. And on the back of this feather here, little flicks, starting at the edge and flicking in. And the last part are the feet and legs. The feet and legs have little wrinkles in them, so you're going to do little smiley mouths down them. Little smiley mouths. Curved on the toes, smiley mouths on the side. And you can colour in the claws if you want to as well. Smiley mouth down the leg. Sideways smiley mouths down the feet. Smile curves towards whichever direction you're heading in. You can do a shadow if you want to do a shadow, but it's not necessary. And that's your bird finished. So the last thing is to do, make sure I sign it and pop the date in. Okay, guys, that wraps it up. Thank you.